pretty wet out there. So I got some stuff I need to do in the shop here. That one right there tossed the chain at the very end. It's what stopped me. I don't know what the heck that is. Rolling off the roof. But it tossed. And I think what happened was it just got a little bit too stretched out. So I got to pull it apart and put a different chain on it, or see if I can salvage that whole Husqvarna chain. I've been running that chain so far, partly because it's ash and it's a little softer, but also it seems like it sharpens up pretty good. I do have an issue with the way it stretches with heat. Both stretches and then retracts. And dumping more oil on it seems like it helps a little bit. So I gotta tune those things up, sharpen them up a little bit, get them ready for tomorrow, because I'll be cutting tomorrow. And I want to point out that that's my right now gold standard for felon saw. And that saw there was one I built pretty early on, and it has a rather healthy increase in compression along with some other changes. Thin gasket, some modifications to the lower transfers and muffler mod, stuff like that. And when I did that, what I was looking for was all the good things about a 572 with a little more punch, a little more torque off the bottom. So when the chain was in the tree and I pull the trigger, it just starts going. And believe it or not, that saw actually has more punch like that than even this one right here, which has got more displacement. But I believe the Dolmore has more top end power. No more RPMs. This one has more RPMs, but I don't know what it is. Something's coming off the roof. But that one has more ultimate power, more pull. It's just that snap off the bottom. What I did there worked. So that's my gold standard, because it has a couple of characteristics I really like, and one I don't. What I really like about it is how easy it is to start and restart and idle, and the fact that I don't have to mess with it with a screwdriver as the seasons change. I like all that stuff. It's a good weight. It's not a lightweight, but it's a weight that doesn't seem to bother me. I don't even think about how much it weighs. And that torque, that's what my modifications gave me. And I think that really helps a lot. Fuel usage. I really like the fact it doesn't vibrate. So the fact that it starts easy and doesn't vibrate, those are things that tend to let me work longer during the day. The fuel usage definitely matters. Now I did the cutback spike so it doesn't stall the chain. And the configuration that I kind of settled on was the 28-inch bar and the C83 chain stock. I like that stuff. It just works. That's one of those things where if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's right now in my mind the premier felling configuration for me. Now other people will have other ideas, but that's what I like right there, that package. My 585 is a little bit better, but it's heavier and it has more power off the bottom, so that's good. The weight is a little bit, I notice it, but it's also very quiet, which brings up the one thing I don't like about that saw is the noise. It's a loud son of a gun. My God. So I have to put both muffs and earplugs in there in order to get through a day without getting a headache on that thing. Now I'm talking several hours. I'm not talking just an afternoon of firewood. I'm talking when I'm out there starting in the morning, run for 4 hours or so. Because I'm old, I'll stop and eat lunch, whatever I'm doing, get back at it for another few hours. By the end of the day, the noise bothers me. I prefer a quieter saw. So to that end, I didn't get quite as radical on this one, although it is pretty loud. And I left this one here stock, and I'm going to try to use this here. What I may do on this one is go in and pump the compression a little bit, and gut the muffler, but not do a not open it up like that. Just see if I can do something a little bit less, so maybe it's a little bit quieter. And then I get some of what I got on that in terms of punch off the bottom without the noise. That would be nice. So that could be a project. On the vintage front, I have failed in my mission to get that 630 running. So that's going to turn into a higher priority. I had it running, but then it started going lean on me. So I think if I have time today, I'm going to take a look at the fuel line and the carburetor. What I'm afraid of is that the seal on the oil pump side, there's like an O-ring in there, that may have failed. But I need to get that going. It's a class of saw that I enjoy. Bob enjoys those too, so it's as much, that as it is needing a saw in that class. I don't need any more saws. And of course I want to put a little more time on the 930. That's a nice saw. Problem with these saws here is I get nervous about running them because I don't want to break them. Now, one of the things I need to do on this saw, but also on the 285 Husky, which is going to be the primary vintage saw. I've retired my Homelite, even though the Homelite's easier for me to get along with than either this or the Husky, just because it's a little lighter and it's a little quieter, vibrates less. This here is a nice saw. The Husky is a beast, but this is a very nice saw to run too. But I need to get bucking spikes a little longer if I can. Keep the saw away from the work, kind of like I did on that one, where I took the west coast and I cut back to bottom. I'd like to replicate that on any saw that I'm actually going to do work on. This one here, I did the same thing. I cut back to bottom. Made a huge difference in just practical use. But I need to do a set of dogs on this one if I'm going to bring it to a work saw configuration. So this one's going to evolve a little bit. I'm going to retire that one for now because I got two more in the back there. They're sitting there, just collecting dust. And I've got this one right here, and I've got another one on the shelf that needs runtime. They need to justify their existence. And I haven't decided if I'm just going to set that one up and have it ready or just leave it as is, which is the way it came out of the woods last time I was felling with that saw. I mean, at least it needs a decal, right? Maybe I put a new bar and chain on it and just let it be a shelf queen. It's pretty much earned its keep. Got a couple of seasons on that saw. So anyway, let me do a little work on these. That's kind of an overview of where I'm at with these saws, but kind of an overview where I'm at on the hobby too, because I'm going to blend some of these old Johnnies, the old John threads in with the firewood side of things, just like I did the Homelite and the 285 Husky. The 285 will be the bulk of it until one of these kicks it out of the pocket. I'm not sure which one. Kind of like the 61 272 I had before. I want to get them to that level of functionality. Now, what have I learned this last couple of days that I didn't put up on video? One is I've got to relearn the same lesson over and over again. And that is with ash, you got to have as little hinge as you can get away with that live stringy stuff. Because my God, it'll tear and it'll pull. Unbelievable. And I've got one tree, I'll put in the video just to give a demonstration where I had, maybe an inch, 3/4 inch hinge. Didn't matter. It just tore anyway. And the only thing you can really do is minimize that, bore cut more. Of course, the bore cut I did was pretty thorough, but I left a little bit of hinge on the outside, a little thick, and did it bite me in the tail. Any other tree species on the planet, it would have broke nice and clean. But when you have ash, it's going to make a real mess. Maybe I'll insert a little bit of that here. ruined some good ash right there. Look at that. Too much hinge. Damn. So I relearned that twice, and then I started getting back to what I consider ash felling technique, which was trusting that the fibers of that tree are really, really, really strong. Moving the hinge as far forward as possible out of the money wood. So if it does pull or tear, you don't lose, the value of the tree as much. It's more cosmetic than actual getting into the meat, which will cost dollars. And making it pretty thin. Now, I'm also going to do things like cut the root flare so it doesn't tear that out of the ground. I did one of those too. I did 2 terrible cuts where if it was a maple or anything else, it would have been perfect. But being ash, it made a mess. So I'll show that. So I'll relearn that lesson. And it's funny, I preach it and then I have to relearn it once I've been cutting conventional tree species for a while. You go back to the stringy ash I have in this place and it bites you every time. You get used to a normal tree cutting strategy, and then all of a sudden you run into that stuff. But back to this saw. I ran this now, I got some time on it. I'd say 5 tanks at least. Yesterday I felled with this saw most of the time. I ran the 572 on 1 or 2 trees. And then I had run out of fuel on this. I had no more to put in there, and I had run out of bar oil, so I picked up this to finish off. And the tree I was cutting was a little bit larger, a little bit harder, and that chain stretched. And then when I pulled it out, I guess I flexed the bar a little bit, and it popped right off. And that's an X-Tough bar. I'm speculating that's what happened. I don't have any other explanation why it tossed. Came back and whacked me right in the leg, but I didn't get cut or anything because it wasn't spinning. It wasn't still connected to the sprocket and turning. Otherwise, it would have been a mess. But that's the second time that's happened with that very chain. So I need to look at it and make sure there's not something, damaged on it or something. Or just get rid of it and go back to Husky C83. But I wanted to get through a job and put one of these chains or 2 of these chains through their service life, filing them and running them and making some money just to prove that you can. This is the whole form of chain on both of them. This one here is the 050. That there is the 060, what's it, 3? 062? I can't remember anymore. But, yeah, 063. I don't know. I have mixed feelings. This guy ran pretty good. I have to admit that chain ran pretty good. And it did stretch, but it wasn't terrible. I could adjust it. This was about that much after every tree or so. I just had to go in there and tweak it. I think I got maybe 2 trees on it. Now, my C83, I'll go through a couple of tanks of gas before it's stretched enough to matter. And I've never had that combination just toss the way that did. So, it could have been just coincidence. I can't really say it isn't, but it's something I'm kind of made aware to think about. Now, again, with this saw here, about the only thing I don't like about it at this point is it vibrates and it's a little heavier than my 572's HTSS. And for whatever reason, it uses more fuel. Not a lot more, but noticeably more. I don't know if you remember, if you watched my videos from a year or 2 back when I was keeping track of fuel with the big blue G395 and was surprised I was getting 3.5, sometimes 4 trees down with that tree in hard maple in the wintertime. And my 585 was going to get 3 trees every time. And then my 572 was like the 585. So the big 395 clone actually was getting more trees down per tank, partly because I had a larger one. But partly it was as fuel efficient as those more modern saws, and I thought that was actually really shocking to me. I expected the 585 to run as good as it did, and I was a little disappointed that the modifications I made to my 572 turned it into the same level of fuel hog as the 585. That was a little bit disappointing. But when you think about it from a physics perspective, it takes fuel. It takes fuel to get burned in order to make power, so it shouldn't be a big surprise. But this one here, I'm kind of tracking it by volume, by how fast I'm getting through, 2.5 gallon can of fuel. This one's definitely a fuel hog as compared to my 572. So I guess the only negatives is it sucks the gas as compared to what I'm used to, and it vibrates it doesn't vibrate a lot. You can't like point to it and say that's a rock and roll shaking saw. It just buzzes me more than my 572 class saws. I can run them and they're just like butter smooth, and the 585 is just as smooth, and my hands don't go numb. Where this one here, I was noticing, I don't know, an hour or two into it, I had to take a break. I started getting a little numb in my hands and fingers, and I began to think about the vibration, and it felt a little heavier, even though it probably isn't. So I was noticing is the point in the fuel usage. So those three things are strikes, but it hasn't broke in my mind yet. So let's just give it some time. And also, I have a Husqvarna 372 carb on there, so I'm sure that's not helping because it's a bigger carb. I'm pretty sure I can lean it out a little on top, but I don't want to. And I'm pretty sure I need to add a little fuel on the bottom to try to make it start a little easier. It's either that or retard the timing or something. But I would like to get it to be at least a 4-pull starter like I have on something like that. And but other than that, I love the saw. I love the power. I love the power to weight ratio. For whatever reason, this version of a full wrap is not bothering me as much as I had on the Husky. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it's how much distance is there, but yeah, I lost some wood, but it didn't just strike me that I'm losing a lot of wood. Where when I was doing Humboldt in full wraps with the 572, it was annoying how much wood I was losing. And so I'm going to leave the full wrap on for now because there's other benefits to it. This could be one of those one saw does all things, where my pure felling saws, I'm not going to have a full wrap. I'm going to have, a half wrap like that. But I need to get the bucking spikes. I like the way that turned out. So there's a lot of good stuff. I love the power. Wish it had a little more snap off the bottom, but I think that's an easy fix for me. So I'm building time with this saw, and it's mostly positive. I love the throttle response once it's going. I love the fact that it'll sit and idle all day once it's started. It's the first initial start where it's a negative as compared to the 572. But after that, it just runs and runs and runs, and easy starter. It's not as loud. That's a plus. A little heavier, like I said. More vibration, like I said, to the point I notice it. More fuel usage, I notice that too. But I'm learning the saw, and the more I learn it, the more I like it. This is a win. I may build another one in a pure felling configuration just to have it, so I can go out there and kill it, doing what I do, get it beat up doing that instead of, beating up a nice saw like this. So this is a win, pluses and minuses, but it's a win. But I need to spend a little time bringing this chain back. Again, you can see I've already taken the rakers down. I've already cut it back. I've got to the point where I got one of those raker guides from like Tractor Supply, and 28 to 30 works best for me in this kind of wood. It's got more than enough power, it's not a race chain. When I get less than that at the chain speed I have, it just revs too much. It doesn't bite hard enough. It's not good. So I have a guide that I filed down to get to the raker I want. So I'm going to go through and just touch the top plates and touch the rakers, see if I can get another couple of days out of it. And again, that's the whole form of chain. So I'll do that now. And then, of course, I'm going to go and address that. That's a mess. Well, I'll continue doing a little talking, but I figured rather than put it in front of me and all you can see is my nose, I'll put it here and maybe you can see something. One of the interesting little things I do is if I don't have a marker, I can identify where I start and finish with a little bit of that. So I always carry that around. But on the 28s, there's always a skip, just because it's an odd number of teeth, 93. So they always have a pair like that where there's no cutter in there. So that's where I always start on these. And I confess to be using one of these, but it just works. So for now, I'm using it. This would replicate me kind of working out in the farm, out in the field versus in the shop. In the shop, I put them in a vise, but out in the field, I do something along these lines. It's funny, I used to get a lot more, I don't know what the right word is, I used to get a lot more enthusiastic about what I would do with the chain to make it work right. I was setting different rakers for the different saws and all that kind of crap. But after a while, I got to the point where I got sort of a general sharpening technique that worked good enough. And so I just do it. Usually I don't use one of these, but this is another one of those things I just want to try. The one thing I'm getting with that county line bracket is consistent. It may not be consistently the best, but it's consistent in what it does. And I get a kick out of it because, if I sharpen a chain and run it in ash, everything looks sharp, It's kind of like pine or any kind of a conifer. Pretty much no matter what you have, it's going to be sharp. And where I really see the failings on a particular sharpening technique is in the hardwood, and especially in the wintertime. And I was always kind of a mentality that these guys were the bottom feeders of the sharpening world. So that's the other reason I want to give it a shot, is just to see how bad it is. As compared to me doing my hand filing, which actually takes a fair amount of concentration and effort to get it right. At least it does for me. Oh, come on. This table not being stable with my vices makes it kind of stutter a little bit. I find it nice sitting here, hearing the birds and all that up here on the hill than being down by the house, by the road, and hearing all the traffic. All right, that's one side. So I'm going to do a couple of quick cuts here and just see whether or not the sharpening is woods worthy before I go carry it all the way out there. Horses are telling me I need to get up there and feed them. So I got some softwood and I got some hardwood. Let's just see what they do. That's all right. It's not great. Makes a pretty good chip. Let's try the other one. Let's try this again where there's gas in the saw. So here's my question. Why did one sharpen up better than the other? This one on the Dolmar is a kick-ass chain. Huh. I better put my glasses on. The difference between the way those two chains cut was night and day. Let's look at them a little closer. Huh. You know, I think I know the answer. This is like that my cousin Vinny moment. See if you can tell. Oh boy. Why that chain with the same sharpening as the one that's on the 572. Let me pull it out. Here's the one on the 572. Take a good look. And this is the one that I sharpen the same exact way. It cuts really good. From what you see in the picture, why is one cutting so much better than the other? And the my cousin Vinny moment is to the person with the glasses. Is that sure? Are you sure? How many fingers do I have? And this might be a good argument for old Husky chain built by Oregon. I think what I'm going to do is get rid of all the Husqvarna chain, that stretchy stuff, go back and find some more of these that I've tossed into the box of misfit chains, and then sharpen them up the same way, because this thing cuts crazy good. Huh.